Right, to discuss the Safe Schools Declaration and government's plans to secure education. We're now joined by Minister of State for Education, Chukwuemeka Nwajiuba. Thank you so much for joining us on News Night. Well, Nigeria was among the first 37 or so countries out of 112 to sign on to this Safe Schools protocols, but it seems it really has been a challenge for Nigeria since 2015 that it signed this. But let me point out this letter written, by some 300 children to the world leaders, where they're demanding, among other things, that armies should be denied access to schools and that governments should ensure paths to schools are free of explosives. This is too much to ask. What do you make of this demand?
Not at all. The letter from the children actually reflect the global acceptance and part of the declaration itself. They are correct. Nigeria already, like you pointed out, since 2015, has been a major force in this declaration. The conference, this is the fourth, and the only one to have been held in Africa. Others been held previously in Norway and Spain. But in 2019, we decided to move from declaration to implementation. So the focus of this meet here in Abuja is how to then deepen and practicalize every commitment that has been made. And that is part of the reason I say the children are correct. When you bring nations together, we look at what has been done, who is doing what, best practices, all the guidelines that we've set out, who has done what and how are they doing it. And in practical situations like that, distill from each other's work plan what it is that you need to do to then get local interpretation into as to what it is that you have taken from abroad. How does that then dovetail into your national security architecture and make them useful for your country? This is exactly what this conference is about, and we've done in these past 3 days, we've agreed on so many things. And this evening, His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria, Jeffrey Onyema, read the communique on behalf of everybody, where we all agreed on the joint actions on the things that we were taking. Now, if you take each of the items the children have asked for, and you see how that one is important, the whole idea is a four-pronged idea. Prevent schools from being sequestered in the first place. 2, if it does happen, how do we get the children to continue to learn? 3, prevent any use of any of our educational structures, including our personnel, teachers, all of us that operate in the education ecosystem ought to seek this protection. And then finally, on the 4th, if anything has happened, because of the nature of children, how do we provide psychosocial support to be able to return them less traumatized and be able to accept knowledge? Because if you look at your report carefully, well put together, she has explained that nearly 1 million children are out of school on account of insurgents and banditries and all kinds of security issues around the place. Some of them organized state actors, some non-organized state actors. So there are 2 ways to look at this. Organized state actors like the Nigerian Army are all signed up to the declarations. So they've actually gone ahead to then do a military guide to then begin a new indoctrination system where they are discouraged from using or sequestering schools nationwide. That is part of the doctrine and the lingo and the way you teach military tactics. Yeah. Now is being incorporated. Right. You move over from there to non-state actors. How do you deter them? Which is part of the children are saying, on the way to school, don't make these places useful for this purpose. Nigerian government has already begun to internalize this because the president has enabled them, for instance, to then set up forwarding bases. When you set forward base in Kaduna, forward base in Katsina, in Sokoto, what you're trying to prevent is a situation where the army needs to fight and then they need a school.
All right.
You're trying to actually preempt all of that. So all of that action is coming into practice. And this is what we all discussed as nations around here and zeroed in more particularly on the Sahel region, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger Republic, and because we're looking at in the context how the security situation around all those ones talk to each other. And that's what we've tried to interpret. Yeah.
All right. Let me take you back or take you still on the commitment, moving from commitment to praxis. Talk to us about how you intend to use domestic policy to achieve this, and the fact that, she talked about 1 million afraid to return to school. Parents coming here afraid to take their children to school because of conflicts. So what are you doing about that? Just those two questions.
A quick one. Every country will react separately, especially how they do. But in our case, because education sits on a concurrent list, so we need an all-of-government approach. So in Nigeria, for instance, we're speaking, the Governors Forum is a very essential part of this. They've taken steps to do what we call a security audit of the gaps in a response period and response time, and that report has also reached us. We've also fleshed that out to our requirement with the National Assembly, because in Nigeria as well, we can only budget for what it is we plan to do and then get the buy-in of the National Assembly to appropriate them. So if they are not appropriated, the budget we've made may not necessarily come into play. So it's an interplay of multi-forces around, because don't forget, we also need to look at the last mile of this, which is how to bring perpetrators to book. The people who bring perpetrators to book, the military who liquidate those who confront them, and the judicial system, we then shows and make sure that students and children are seeing that those who came to harass them are now actually being punished. So that's the way to bring them in. But more importantly, is to enable teachers return to classrooms, because the most important, I just came back from Michika, and we had moved schools in Lassa into Michika, and I had moved school from Bruni Yardi into Potiskum. So throughout last week, I spent it on the borders all the way from Michika to Magdali, in order to be able to decide how many of the students need to be moved from one part to the other. Those kind of engagements and commitments are the practical ways to implement the decisions and declarations that are taken. Now, there is forward intelligence. For instance, in the military high command in Nigeria took decisions to relocate 2 of their own military schools into areas where they are better defended. Those are the kind of consciousness that practical decisions like this require. And us as a government, because I keep saying, you can't run Nigeria from a focal one point. You need to look at it as a whole of government approach and bring everybody into the field. And that is what we've done. Because as Minister of State, I'm almost talking with every governor I can see to bring them into the loop and make sure that what we're doing is all in sequence. Everybody is coordinated in this effort and sharing that with the international community, so that the international community can then see where the gaps are and fund those gaps where budgetary allocations do not meet them. That is, I'm trying to be concerted in this way. Yeah.
Great. And I'm looking at this as maybe long-term measures. What about the immediate measures, especially for teachers? About over 600 have actually been killed. One can only imagine how this affects those, other teachers that have survived this onslaught. What are the provisions, the immediate ones that you're putting in place? And this item 6, if I can quickly get it out, in terms of demands or recommendations, completing investigations and fair trials of perpetrators of attacks on education. And of course, putting accountability mechanisms in place within military structures to ensure that there are, consequences for violations. Are there any structures in place already?
Yes, there are. On the 6th point, actually, within the Nigerian military, yes, that has already been done. That is already finalized. 2 months ago, or within the last 6 weeks, they've had this seminar on disseminating that guideline into the entire Nigerian armed forces. They've done that. The Nigerian military is running at full speed on this. We don't have a problem there. We don't have also a problem with investigations, because really, those who attack schools in Nigeria, when we've not apprehended them as persons, they've been liquidated in their confrontation with the military head on. So it's not a question of trying them to know whether they were in the school. They were. But when they were met, they were taken out. So the room for arrest and trial does not continue. So, but as it relates to teachers' confidence, we are rebuilding that. With the Teacher Registration Council has increased funding mechanism to help everybody return to school, and we're doing that. And don't forget, we're also trying to make sure children are learning even when classes are not in. Some of them we've used different platforms to reach them, depending on the state where these are called. We're helping out or moving them into different schools. Kaduna has moved some people into town. Zamfara shut down some places, but they are learning, as the case may be.
Yeah. All right. The Minister of State for Education, Chukwuemeka Nwajiuba, thank you for being
Thank you very much
on this program.